meeting to order. Start with a roll call. We have Brian Murphy, Chris Buckley, Bill Bolton, myself, Rebecca Hansen, Bridget Powers. Welcome back, Jack Scarborough, and Steve Whitman. We will start off by reviewing the minutes from our last work session, November 2nd, 2017. Any comments or edits for the minutes from November 2nd?
I just have a comment, just because I think it's funny, but maybe on the second page, 2 or 3, and this may be exactly how it was said, but on 2 master plan, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th bullet point down, the last sentence of that, I think this is Greg making it known that doing so puts the people he works with in a weird spot. I don't know if that might have been, I mean, it just seems like informal language. I mean, it's probably fine, but, and that's all I have for you. I had to say something.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Anybody want to take a stab at that one? Desperate situation, it's in a weird spot.
It could have been what he said, though, you know?
Yeah, I think that's probably what he did say.
Yeah, knowing you.
Awkward position.
Yeah, that would be more like the language you would expect, but.
So, did you want to change it then?
I like it. It's got character. Yeah, let's leave it.
So we're going to leave that as is, but just noted that it exists in the minutes. I mean.
Yeah, I just forget I said anything. Okay. I liked it.
So nobody would have seen that ever, unless you mentioned it now. Everyone that's.
Yeah.
And it's going to be in the minutes next time.
TV land.
See how long we can volley this forward. Any other comments on the minutes? Anything?
I move that we approve them as written.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Abstain.
I will as well, because I wasn't here.
Before we open up the any public comments unrelated to the agenda, I just have a quick question, point of order. Since we now have, for the first time in a while, a quorum of full members and an alternate, do I need to actively bring Steve to the table as an alternate? I mean, we've been sort of not mentioning that at all, or is it just assumed since he's here, he's?
The board consists of 7.
Okay.
So, and we have 6.
All right.
So he will, when he attends, automatically seat.
It has not been an issue.
No.
For a while, so I
Let's
just want to
hope it
make sure I
becomes
understood
one.
that.
Yeah, I'd
right.
be happy to sit up there.
Yeah.
We could even get another alternate. We could have 2 of us up there. Wouldn't be bad.
All right, with that, are there any public comments unrelated to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to administrative matters. Number 1, a boundary line adjustment between PID number 108-154 and PID number 108-106. Is there a representative from this that would like to summarize the?
Good evening. My name is Ed Holbert, Hebron, New Hampshire. I represent New Cape Equity, partner of the company. We're the owners of the vacant lot 154 on Emerson Street, and we filed application to get a minor boundary adjustment with an agreed upon lot 106, the neighboring lot.
Is that the whole thing?
Probably that simple, right?
Yep.
It is simple.
Are there any questions from the board before we determine the completeness of this application?
I move the application complete.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, let's see. Next up, we will open up the public hearing at 6:36. Or is there anyone that would like to speak out about this proposal? Okay, I will close the public hearing at 6:36 and a half and bring it back to the board. Any questions for the applicant?
It's probably not pertinent, but just, why would you need that sliver of property added to that front piece?
It's on the vacant lot,
Yep.
the sliver. It makes the property more conforming.
Okay. Doesn't it conform prior to the lot line though, or lot line adjustment, or you just?
We had the property surveyed. My two properties, we couldn't find the pins, so we had it resurveyed. And the adjacent property actually was surveyed too. Mr. Tal's property, the new owner, and he came up with actually more land on the new survey because of the pins were finally found. And he agreed to give me .03 acres.
Okay.
These are lots of record, and they were about a quarter of an acre, weren't they, Ed?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Would anyone like to make a motion about this application?
I move we approve this boundary line adjustment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
I need to get you the Mylar.
To be recorded, yes.
We have to do that.
Yeah, and we need $51 to give to the county for that as well. Yeah. Thanks, Ed.
Okay, next up, we have two boundary line adjustments, and if I'm understanding this correctly, we will assess their completeness separately and then consider them one application for the vote. Am I understanding that correctly, Brian?
Yeah, because there are three properties involved, but they're all favoring the central property.
Okay.
I figured it was a lot cleaner to have paperwork attending to each one of the acts,
Okay,
even though, when they're both approved, it becomes,
okay. All right.
just to keep it straight.
So we'll do the completeness first, then then open it up the public hearing for both. So, a boundary line adjustment between PID number 229-020 and PID number 229-027.
My name is Wade Lane. I am the owner of Lot 20. And which one did you say first? 27? Lot 27? Is that the one?
20 and 27.
Okay. So that was just, I just wanted to gain more property behind my house. It's just as simple as that. So we were in agreement, and that was it.
Any questions from the board on the completeness of this? Would anyone like to make a motion to accept this application as complete?
So moved.
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So then we will assess the completeness of boundary line adjustment between PID number 229-016 and PID number 229-020.
This one is just a little different. The original property line cut the corner of the driveway off. We had it's all deeded correctly when we purchased the house, but my neighbor actually approached me and said, hey, we can make that right, and that's exactly what we did. So he gave me the land, and I just had it surveyed, so another simple one.
Again, would anyone like to address any questions to the applicant regarding the completeness of this application?
Just one note, there was an error on the application. The .58 acre parcel, which will be the second one in. If we're doing them in order, I can wait on that, Madam Chair. It was just misidentified.
Okay.
It should say number 229020 and 229027. It was identified as 016 and 027.
Okay. But is the one we have now correct, or is this?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right.
Where are we now?
I believe, unless there are no comments about the completeness of this application, we are ready for a motion to accept this application as complete.
I move to accept.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay,
Thank you very much.
so now,
Well, we're not-
so your application is now complete, and now we are, going to open up the public hearing for,
You second?
I second.
Thank you.
we will, so I'm going to open up the public hearing in just 1 second for both applications. So if there's any public comments, it is now 6:43. If there are any public comments about either of these two boundary line adjustments? Any public comments? Okay, I am closing the public hearing at 6:43 and 47 seconds. And I will bring it back to the board. Are there any questions about this application for or either of these two applications for the applicant?
I could dream up a question, but, so it looks like, your driveway is now going to be corrected with that additional .41 acres lease access. Was there a pre-existing driveway that, was
Actually,
the dotted line thing that was?
Yes, the original driveway was the one you see on the neighbor's property on 16. That was the original driveway for the property. So I'm not really sure if it was shared at one time. My house was built quite a bit before the lot 16 was built, so
Okay.
I'm not sure why it was like that, if it was.
And that'll just be maintained as a little turnaround, for your neighbor?
Yeah,
That
it's
little jog
paved.
there.
Yeah, it's paved up to there, and yep.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I make a motion, we approve the application.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the way I keep wanting to.
Madam Chair, could I get you to sign the Mylar now, because they're
Yeah,
going to
yep.
do a closing tomorrow?
Try to get close.
Oh, right there. Okay. It's the 16th, right?
Yes. Again.
Yeah.
Still.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Brian, make sure that ink doesn't smear.
It's there forever.
You can't read my signature anyway.
When are you heading out?
Great, thank you very much.
All right, wait. You're welcome.
Okay, so moving on to our continuing discussion of the development of the master plan. Greg, would you like to join us at the table?
So have you had a chance to review the vision, land use, implementation, and economic profile chapters?
I
Lot.
read through those.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when, my problem, I mean, I read through them, but it's, I couldn't print them out, and it would be a lot nicer to have them printed out, and I think I was asking you about
Yeah, you
that.
did.
Brian. At some point, if, when we feel we're far enough along to have a printed, and I do have, not of those, but printed copies of, other things, but if we figure we can work off a printed copy, it would help me out.
Okay. I do have an extra set of printed copies of all of these. I know you had been printing the implementation tables and transportation chapter as we went along for the meetings, but I know this week it was a lot of printing.
Yeah,
Did you not?
So the documents that you emailed to me are, that's everything that we've worked on to this point, other than the transportation chapter.
Yeah, because the transportation chapter, we had already
Right.
reviewed the draft and everything.
So I'll get those to you. I'll just print them up and put them at the front counter. Does anybody else need a copy of the master plan? The documents that we've gotten so far?
I've got the vision, and thank you for that. I could use the other ones as well, the rest of them,
Did
but I
you
have.
print out the vision from, or did we have that?
Brian printed it for me.
Oh, okay.
The most recent one.
Yeah,
So,
the
yeah.
vision, yep.
I'd like them to, please.
I've only got one copy, one extra copy, 2 total of everything, if you don't all mind sharing.
Okay.
We could, we could share, we could kind of pass them along.
I've
For anyone that might work.
got a full copy.
I've got chapters 1, 2, 3. I'm good.
And those chapters have been
These are dated.
edited, I think, unless,
Dated
but
9 November.
hardly at all. So we could certainly use those. I was thinking like the vision chapter.
I
do
have
have
the
a-
transportation.
Okay. And I do have several extra copies of the implementation plan.
I have that also.
Yeah.
Jack?
I'd rather have them digital, so I appreciate what you already said.
Okay.
All right, you want me to email those to you, Steve?
I have them.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So, on some of those chapters, it was more updating data and updating the narrative to stay current. But some of those chapters, there was a much more thorough review and restructuring of the narrative. So, just wondering if you have comments on the chapters, if you needed help in me highlighting what's really changed significantly in order to comment on it better.
I think for me, I did review all the documents. I think a lot of it's just wordsmithing and presentation more than anything else. I don't know what other people think. And just making it consistent in how it's presented. Grabbing charts and stuff from lots of different places and trying to figure out if we can make them look a little more engaging, so.
Right.
And to that end, I looked at those samples that you sent out, and once again, those, if we could, like, maybe at a meeting, because I'm assuming you would have hard copies of those for your,
Yeah, I can bring you hard copies. if you
and
wanna
not
see
that
them.
we'd all need one, but if we could just, because there were some things, like, for instance, and I don't know, I can't remember if this was in our master plan, but one of the things that was mentioned in Newbury, I thought, had a really slick, I don't know if we need to color photos and stuff, but, you know, they mentioned that New Hampshire Wildlife Action Plan as if that's a working document, and I think that's an important document. I don't know if that's in ours. I mean, it might be. I can't remember because it's been discussed many times, but if it's directly mentioned in our master plan, that could be something that we would at least refer to, or
Okay.
Is it in there,
That's
Greg?
not in the land use chapter, so we could
yeah, I mean, just
find a way to incorporate it.
a mention that we can use that as a guiding document. It seems pretty useful.
Is the natural resource chapter one that we're updating, is that on our to-do list?
No,
The-
that's what we're working on, right? That's in our,
No, that's actually different from the land use
Yeah,
chapter.
different than- yeah,
There was natural resources inventory, which was done for Plymouth by Move Out of Bethlehem.
Yeah, quite a long time ago. Yeah. So the natural resource chapter, I didn't think we'd updated as of yet, right?
I don't think there was a solid plan to update it in this go-around.
Okay, because that might be, even if we do a summarized natural resource chapter as part of what the chapters that we have to write, that might be a place where we pull that in. And we can, luckily, there are a bunch of maps through the Wildlife Action Plan. You can pull up town-specific maps like the ones we looked at that we could even pull in, that I think would complement the ones that you guys created, and get that information across. It's tremendous data, I would agree with you.
Would that be something that would fit in the indices? Or would it be?
Could be, but it could also, it
Bibliography.
could be the basis of a natural resource section of the master plan.
I also just came across something today, totally unrelated, where the Lakes Region Planning Commission has actually done some co-occurrence mapping for all of the PEMI watershed, and I don't know how far up that goes, but maybe you know more about this through PERLAC, but there has been some co-occurrence mapping that has occurred in being in the PEMI watershed, so but that's, if we're talking about the natural resource chapter, that might be something that's a little
That would
yeah.
dovetail very nicely, though. PERLAC has a very thorough database.
Maybe not PERLAC, but at least DES.
At least DES.
Do we fall within does Plymouth fall within the Lakes Region watershed
in the Lakes,
mapping? just
with
within
the Lakes Region Conservation Trust.
Yeah.
We might be right on the cusp of that, but Newfound's included, so
Right.
I can look into that. for
I can
sure.
too, they're updating that mapping right now, and they're including all the climate resilience information from TNC.
Okay, yeah. And I'm sort of on the periphery of that.
Okay.
Of that project, sort of, as well, so. And I think that would be a more complete co-occurrence mapping. But that's kind of getting us away from the master plan update process at hand, so.
Yeah, so with the comments, I mean, they should be done at a public hearing instead of, just as you go over email. So I could be at the next planning board meeting if you do need more time to do a more thorough review for comments. But other than that, we're gonna obviously do some more wordsmithing or more review of the format, and especially the figures and tables, like you said, to make sure they all are pretty consistent in formatting and appearance when we pull everything together at the end.
And I think we've talked about this a couple times in the past few meetings, is just how much do we want, or when does our time with North Country Council end, and how are we gonna put this all into a meaningful document, and how much can we all do as a board? And maybe if we don't have specific comments tonight on all the sections that were distributed, maybe we can talk a little bit about just visually and aesthetically what we want to see for the plan, and how much do we expect North Country Council to do, and how much do we take on ourselves. So.
I looked through the examples and made some general notes, which I hope without having them in front of me, I can remember what I meant by them. And being new to this, I feel a little over my head in terms of the knowledge of the process, but maybe it will be helpful in the sense that I'm more like everybody else out there than all of you. So some things that I just noticed when I was looking at the examples were the Newbury one. I was thinking about Frank's comments from the last meeting, and just thinking about making sure that the accomplishments are noted, because his comment seemed that we really haven't moved very far. So with that feedback, albeit only from one person, it seems like it might be nice, if there are some, to highlight those accomplishments as a way of, you know, eliciting some trust that this is something that does move along.
And that was something Newberry did?
That was something that was in Newbury's, and you know, being these are big, thick documents, and I'm not sure how many people are going to slog all the way through them. So I really appreciated that there were graphics representing the meat of the information accompanying the text in the Newbury one. I did not read all of these page for page. And I also liked in that one the issue and strategy format.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any notes for the Jaffrey one. That was a short one, right?
Yeah, just the vision chapter.
It's similar to the issue strategy format in the Newbury one. I like the goals and strategies in the Lincoln one, and the historical timeline. That's, you know, I learned some things about Plymouth that I didn't know when I looked back at when I was looking at one of these chapters. And what I really liked about the Dover one was the educational aspect of it, in terms of helping people to understand what the impacts are at a helping to understand what the impacts are. That the section that caught my attention was talking about what master plan aspects, how those impact social capital, for example. You know, that's information I've never really thought about, but is really important to me now that I understand it a little bit better. So that was helpful to me.
I'm pretty superficial. And I like the Newberry one too. You know, I like the fact that they wrap it up in one little graphic.
Me too.
As far as the pertinent points and stuff, so.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
So for someone like leafing through, that will stand out.
You're still gonna get it.
And then as far as like how I would use it ultimately, you know, it would be basically looking at a PDF and searching on a word, you know, like slope or something like that, just to see what we're doing or where we're going. And you know, I think that's how people that might be interested in doing something might just like search through it. But I think the fluffy stuff is really nice too. So
I'm with you on the sort of just having it look with engaging with more photos and a title instead of just, you know, Plymouth master plan, and just a little jazzier looking than, you know.
And Greg, is that something you would do anyway? Like, because you were talking about continuing to work on this and work on the formatting, or is that something you specifically need us to tell you it has to look like this? Like, we want
a little bit of both. I hadn't gotten examples of the ones that you specifically liked emailed to me, but I have seen, you know, the Newberry and Dover ones, and we can. Yeah, obviously the cover page would have some photos of the town.
And where would those photos come from? I mean, that sounds like a dumb thing,
that's what I
but
was
we need
thinking
to
too.
like.
So I actually had in my notes from Tara that she had asked that the planning board had volunteered to.
That sounds about
contribute
right.
photos. that was, you know, that discussion happened before I was here, but.
Me too.
And yeah, and me too. But
Yeah.
but I mean, if that's
My
the
fault.
case, I mean, that's something we can actually
Yeah.
do. Is get photographs and bring them in. And I think right now that's I think I need like specific direction on what like we need to do this. So if we want our master plan to look more like Newbury's, you know, let's get some photographs together. I mean, we can do that. Let's figure out how we're going to make the graphs, you know, if we're going to do that, what information we're going to take and make a graph. And it looks like I mean, there are a lot of nice maps in what you gave us. I was sort of impressed. And there's tables.
Yeah, and if there are, I'm not sure exactly what the pie chart was that you really liked in the Newberry one, but if there are like, you know, types of graphs that convey a certain kind of information in other master plans that you would like to see in the Plymouth one.
So not necessarily a pie chart, but just like, you know.
Oh yeah, it's just
there's the
graphic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Or
for
similar ones in other plans for, you know, workforce details and types of housing and.
if it's data we've already collected and it's just a matter of presenting it in a certain way, we'll definitely incorporate that. If you have specific ones that you all agree that should be in the Plymouth master plan.
So can I make a suggestion for Greg's benefit, but as well for our benefit? So we're almost at the end of our contract. He's done a tremendous job with the chapters that are being delivered to us, but we have work left to do. So like, I feel like it's premature to make him go through the formatting hoops for us when we still have work to do. Like, we still need to collect photos. We still need to write a couple of those chapters. So that's one thought, is that we get all our content together. We identify, highlight sections that we think should be summarized as an infographic or anything like that, and then do it all at once. Because if we make him do infographics and then we go to do them for the other chapters, they're not going to look the same.
Right.
So I guess that's my major suggestion. And then I'm happy to share a proposal as far as how we might work with university students to help us in the spring wrap this up. I'll leave my first proposal out there for people to react to, including Greg.
So thinking of a timeline then, you know, so the contract goes away end of December, and if you're kind of proposing to get all the data, the chapters together, so that Greg can work it, or we're okay?
Greg's
So
free.
no, you're not.
Unless you want to contract more with them, which I'm not standing in the way of that.
He might be on the planning board by then anyway. So.
Oh, that's smart. Why did we wait so long?
Okay, so then, you know, we'll target a spring, as far as like getting university help, would be like the spring semester, and we're looking at like May, June.
Yeah, so the second part of that offer is I actually have a class of upperclassmen that I've been asked to teach this spring, and it's called Community Research Experience. And they're upperclassmen, they're coming from a bunch of different majors, but it's generally kind of a municipal planning focus. And so when this came as an opportunity, I saw a potential, and I mentioned to Rebecca that I'd offer. We could take this on as our project. This is something I'm happy to put time into anyway as a planning board member, but I need to do a project with them. They shouldn't necessarily be the ones deciding on policy, but they could help us both in pulling together the inventory, you know, with my assistance, and crafting stuff that we as a planning board could then review and edit. And they could also help us with the assembly of a draft. Like, they could help us with photos, they could help us do infographics that are the same across. For them, it would be a really good learning experience. They'd end up with a portfolio piece. At the end of the day, we'd end up with one comprehensive draft that we could review, make changes to, and then bring forward to one or more public hearings. Because we've talked about wanting to also put this out there and let people have a look at it.
And the timeline on that, Steve, would be?
They're going to start, they would start in January. We could potentially hit the ground running and break it up over the semester based on what the planning board thought were the priorities. And then I would hope that their work would be done by the end of April.
And is there any reason that timeline wouldn't work for us?
You know, obviously it's an extension of what we kind of like envision to have, like a public hearing, and, you know, but that's.
But it's the public clamoring to, I mean, would that create a problem somewhere? Like, that's.
I don't think so.
Not really. I mean, it's a
seems
delay
like
of months rather than years, you know, and.
I mean, at this point, by the time we get to May, it'll be a delay of a year, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, we already delayed. We're already months past when we thought we'd have this done.
Right.
I mean, and secretly, I shouldn't be secretly, in full disclosure.
Well, turn your mic off first.
I'm going to work on it a lot more if I do it through that class, because I'm going to have to. I'm going to be meeting with them twice a week. And then we can feed stuff to Chris in paper form so that he can go through and edit stuff, which he seems very happy to do. So, like, I think we could put together a work plan and we could make the best use of the materials Greg's given us, so that we end up with this, final product that is North Country Council in the town of Plymouth. And the students benefit from that.
Sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, to me,
I
that's.
feel like we're overextending Greg here.
Right. But the question is, how can we get the maximum benefit from Greg in the 35 days we have left or whatever?
What would be
For the contract.
Right.
So, I mean, Steve's right, we should get together and live this a little bit and then turn it back. But we have this calendric wall that we're going to hit in a very short period of time. So
Right.
I think to honor the contract with NCC, we should get the maximum that we can, in the time allotted, and then push it off. But that's a great idea, Steve. I thought that, that with the intern help, and that kind of fits essentially what I'm talking about. So we can get the administrative stuff out of the way by the first of the year, and then.
So, Greg, we don't want to put you in a weird position or anything, but
Spot.
You saw that coming.
we don't put you in a weird spot. But how, with that in mind, and it sounds like a lot of the board is into this idea of working with students. What do you think you would need to do to get to a point by the end of December where you can hand off to the board and Plymouth State planning master plan update team?
Yeah, we would hand off something that's very editable, including all the figures. We would make sure that you can easily edit them without having to go back and crunch the data again. We would still, honor the contract and try to get it as close to consistently formatted and finished as possible. If you still have specific comments on any part of the chapters, we'd obviously revise them. And if you have specific comments on things you'd like to see, like a cool idea for an infographic, we'd do our best to incorporate it and hand it off in a way that helps the class and the planning board get it done.
When you do final format on plans in the office now, do you guys do it all in Word, or do you use a different program?
Word, and then export it to a PDF.
Okay. I mean, from my perspective, if the Word documents that you have here as PDFs, just the original Word documents with the data you're saying will be fine. Because if given a choice, I don't know who these students are yet,
Right.
but we typically do all our plans in InDesign. So we're going to copy and paste the text, and we're going to have a better palette of tools to create a graphically interesting plan. And the ones I sent you guys were just to kind of show you some possibilities. There are a lot of others we could look at. So the planning board could kind of pick a style, and because Greg's giving it to us in a usable format, we can plug and play and put it in once we know the content is dialed in.
And I am able to use, I don't necessarily have InDesign, and I don't know if I'll have access to it in the spring, but I can use InDesign, so I could always get like a free trial or something like
Awesome.
that. So,
Cool.
So I have those skills. But I think I would agree, using a graphic program like InDesign is going to give us the flexibility to do stuff that's a lot more engaging than you could in a Word product.
And the other thing that's really nice is when we put out that final document, one of the reasons we've switched to doing it from Word is we put it out there and someone doesn't like a term or they don't like a sentence, and we decide to pull it. And you know how it is in Word, everything changes, right?
Yeah.
The whole document's screwed up now. With InDesign, it's not like that. So it makes it less stressful to go in and make changes, add things.
Something that I'm just thinking of, because are you the one that did the maps for that were in the?
Some of them were me, some of them were one of my coworkers.
Because I think
So-
having those maps dialed in is probably something we would need from you.
That's one thing that would be really hard for me to hand off as an editable thing.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
So I think that if we've got you for another month, maybe we can all take a really hard look at all the maps, and just any edits we want, we'll send those to you.
And to be honest, I mean, I don't know, Greg, you could go back and check, see if this is a possibility. If we don't need you to work on the formatting or collecting, other data, maybe getting a couple additional maps with the wildlife action plan that look the same as the land use maps. Because that would be really useful. And then we could pull them in and interpret it in the text. But I think Chris's point, and I don't know if anyone can think of any other maps they want to see, but just a couple of maps, it doesn't have to be really map heavy, that are, clipped to Plymouth and updated data than what we already have. That might be really good.
And I can ask the Lakes Region Planning Commission about the co-occurrence maps that were referenced in a proposal that I was looking at, so.
Right, so yeah, if you have a couple, or a few specific types of maps, showing a specific kind of information, let us know.
I mean, I would say if I could ask for 2 maps, it would be wildlife action plan, which there are a couple different layers you can show, but at least summarizing the different habitats by statewide priority. There's like 3 colors.
Okay.
And then maybe 1 general natural resource map, just stuff from Granite, where are the aquifers,
Okay.
Stuff like that. You already have, it seems like we have steep slopes and a few of the other things
Yeah,
in
so
land
we
use,
had-
so.
We had included some natural resources, data layers in the context of these are development constraints, not
Right.
in the context
It's
of
resources.
habitat. Yeah,
Yeah.
natural resources.
So like conservation land,
Are the conservation trails in there? Because that's a question, that's one of the things we've been hearing is people in this town saying, we know these trails exist, but we don't know where they are. Because we talked about that earlier. Here would be a good way to initially introduce people to the fact that, we do have these trails and here they are. And those maps, I mean, the Conservation Commission already has those maps. And plus, you could probably whip those up. And
And it wouldn't need to be any bigger than the regular one, just
yes.
identifying where the trails are, and if they get close enough, they can find them at that
the
point.
Fox Park trails could be on there. Even those mountain bike trails in Fox Park could be the ones that are
legal.
legal. Yeah, the formal trails. I think those should be in there. I mean that.
So recreation access points.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's a good thing for people to know about, particularly if we're going to build on that.
Yeah, and I like how you said that because it'd be good to have all types of recreation included in one map.
That would be great.
Boat ramps and water access along with trails. That's something you don't see together.
I like that
Same
too, because
map.
it kind of gives us an inventory of what we've got too, so.
Yeah, we have an implementation action to really develop a plan for those resources. So this is a good lead-in to let people know, like, wow, because we hear people say, like, well, there aren't any trails in Plymouth because they haven't been out on the plentiful trails we have.
All right, so we've got a general natural resources, we've got one with the wildlife action, I've got this is probably not the one you want. This is the wildlife habitat land cover. You wanted the one with the highest ranked habitat.
I think so, because then we could just include a link to the full wildlife action plan. We don't have to include every map.
Yep.
People can go look at the whole. Just to,
Comment on the coloration though. That wildlife map that I guess was distributed like several months ago or something. It was like all these, very pink and light purple or light orange, and it was not really a pretty map. And
that's the one that was the wildlife action plan, like the one right there.
Corridors.
Like this, I just don't have the other.
Yeah, I think it was the other one.
It's the colors of Fish and Game chose.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have much way to, when you're clipping that and presenting it, do you have much control over the?
I don't know.
No,
Maybe
no,
James,
it's pretty much
James
you
might be
just-
able to figure out a way to change the colors, but
You put, I mean, to pull it off their website, you basically select the town. They
Yeah.
created them all, so you just pick them up from a drop down for your
Yeah,
town.
there's no, you don't.
he
play
might
around.
actually have the GIS layers.
You can get the GIS layers.
Right.
With everything like 508 compatible and stuff, how can you have like coloration that, you figure like for 88, you have to have a 508 compatible color scheme, but
Good
whatever.
question.
That probably isn't, but anyway.
So, some kind of wildlife action plan map, a natural resource, as opposed to constraints, the actual like resources that we want to acknowledge, and then like trails and recreational access points. Those would be great to have all 3 of those.
Yeah.
Because I think that having looked through these chapters and a lot of there's enough information in most of the bar graphs and things like that, that I think we'll be able to either do them or toss them to Steve's class. I think we can update a lot of that, but I think what we won't be able to do is make the awesome maps that you have done.
No,
so.
we won't, right.
And they look great, so I think that's in my mind, the best way to keep you busy for this.
Yeah, so like you said, since we won't be handing them off in a usable way, specific comments on the maps by December 31st.
Okay.
If you have anything you'd like to see changed.
Do you want to set the deadline a little earlier?
Oh, yeah.
Something else going on
We
in
know
December.
you're doing
yeah.
New Year's Eve.
We have a meeting scheduled for the 21st. That's the regular business meeting, and then there's another work session thrown in early December.
And I will say that I am not here for that work session, so.
Okay.
The 21st?
No, with a meeting, so that is the 7th.
Okay.
If that's the day of the meeting, then I will not be there.
And we do have the opportunity of scheduling more meetings, so. I know that wasn't taken up with a big grin the last time I dropped it, but it's there. So.
Do we have any applications for the December 21st meeting?
No, not at this point.
Okay.
I'm not sure when I don't have my calendar with me as to when it closes out, but it's probably within the next few days. They're trying to get about a month ahead of us.
Is it possible to switch the meeting date, the work session date, to a date that works for you? Or can you not do that? I mean, instead of
Chair's
adding a
discretion.
meeting, swap the weeks.
I am amenable to that.
Yeah.
Is that
It's
because you're
easier
gonna
to
miss
move.
the 21st or
I'm
just
gonna
the
miss the
7th?
7th.
But that's a regular meeting?
Yeah, work session.
7th is a work
It's
session.
a Thursday.
The 21st is a regular meeting.
Right. You know, those are, the public hearing meetings are set by application. The others are at whim and more or less. We can post them like a Board of Selectmen meeting. And we don't have to notify butters. All we got to do is let people know 5 days in advance that there's going to be a work session or a non-business meeting. You know, public's always welcome to attend, but the difference between, you know, that and the public hearing, as you know.
So I think the question is, as far as, I hesitate to have just one meeting in December, especially since we're wrapping stuff up with North Country Council. So I wonder, I mean, I'm okay if you guys want to run one without me. I'm sure it'll be fine. Or if you want to postpone, I could do the 14th as well.
If we did the 14th, could we, tell me if this sounds reasonable, could we pull together all of our comments on the maps for the 14th and get them to Greg that night? And then it would give you a couple weeks to make changes and send them to us. I don't know if you have to present them to us, as long as they're clear.
Especially if,
Probably better if you don't, because then we won't, because we're just going to keep making comments.
and if the master plan isn't going to be finished on December 31st,
Right.
if you guys are still working on it, then, right, I wouldn't have to present it, just incorporate them.
Does anyone want some of these that we can mix and match? These all have maps in them?
These are the.
And we can all look and then maybe we could trade later?
Well,
Can we
Greg
mark
gave
right
me
on
his
these?
copies. Do you need these back?
Oh, no. That's
Okay.
So this is the vision, land use,
You
chapters
have
1
the
through
vision.
4.
Who needs the vision?
Got the vision.
So do we want to do that, the 14th of December, with
I'm
all
gonna
our
just
map
grab
comments?
My calendar here to make sure that I'm not promising something.
That's my school Christmas party.
Uh-oh.
Does that help you out? or-
Debatable.
And we're not restricted to Thursdays, but yeah, we could meet a different.
How about Wednesday, the 13th?
I can't do Wednesday the 13th.
Could we make it earlier? Or does your party start like right after school?
It's after school, so I could come after it.
I'll make it later. You know, I don't know. Friend, I'm gonna advise you don't.
Especially not if the microphone's gonna be on. That is the only other Thursday in December.
But even if you could submit your
Yeah,
thoughts to us on any
okay.
changes
All
in
right,
the work session.
yeah. I think it's better for you to be here than me to be here, frankly.
I don't know. All right, so we're gonna aim for a work session on the 14th, and at that time, we will have comments for Greg on the maps that we have. And is it possible for you to get those
Yeah.
maps beforehand? The three that we had mentioned, the recreation, the general natural resources, and the wildlife action critical habitat?
Yeah, so that'd be, I'd get it to you December 7th, which is like 3 weeks away. Yeah.
Okay,
That'd be awesome, because
Okay.
then we could have a look at them and make sure they're cool.
okay. And I'll do my best. Oh, I'm not gonna be able to send out a reminder. I'm out of town for a little bit.
So are we swapping out the 7th for the 14th? Or are we going to have the 7th and the 14th?
It seems like we're swapping out the 7th for the 14th unless you guys are antsy to meet. So, but Greg will get the maps to us on the 7th, so you could spend that time from, 6:30 until whenever, if you're missing the planning board working on that stuff, but.
I have a feeling it would just be me. A very weird spot.
And certainly, as they're generated, if you email them to me, I'll get them to the board members in advance, so.
Great.
What's the best way to get comments to you? Do you want us to like draw on the maps, a list of bullets, or whatever we give you, you'll be okay with?
Anything, draw on the map, scan it, write on it. If you could draw on the map on some way, in some way, whether it's hand drawn or computer edited, that's probably the best.
Okay.
instead of-
But we want to bring those comments on the 14th to make sure other people agree, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe if you have one of each printed out,
Okay.
we can make a fine, just so that we don't make it really confusing when you get back to the office. Yeah, because like Jack and I might look at them and see different things that should change, so at least we should come to consensus. And
If you send me some photos before December 7th, the offer's still on the table for us to put photos into the master plan before December 31st.
So send them digitally. Yeah, I guess that's what people do these days.
No Polaroid in the film, we'll have it developed for you.
Slides.
Right.
Historic Plymouth.
on transparency, right?
I think that the high school digital photography class, I know that they did a portrait
Great idea.
at the senior center thing, but I wonder if they've done anything else that would be emblematic of Plymouth. I can
Yeah,
ask.
I mean, that's
Liz.
what are we
Yeah.
looking for pictures? For a specific thing or the beauty that is Plymouth?
All over the place.
Yeah, I mean,
These are just sort of,
monuments, the rock in the middle of New Hebron Road. I don't know, but I wonder if like Donna Rhodes would, because she or
Yeah.
someone like that
Yeah.
probably has a collection of photographs specifically taken of things like that, iconic scenes of Plymouth.
Eli Badger.
Eli, yeah.
So that's one of the,
Yeah, but he's.
I have 4 seasons of Tenny.
Oh,
do you really?
And because if we go out and take pictures now, we're just getting stick season, so I think we're gonna have to reach into,
Yeah.
All season.
Right, and certainly we
The
have
same
photographs at home. I mean, not
Fairgrounds.
that I took, but Jen.
I think
Send it.
like to Jack's point, one of the things we could work with the students on is creating a Dropbox folder of photos. So we find out the people like Jack who have distinct areas of town that they've been photographing, and if they're willing to share their photos, we can give them credit. We load them up. We reach out to the high school. We reach out to some of these folks. But if we have a name for the plan, we create a hashtag and we start getting it out there. People will they'll Instagram all our photos for us.
oh, yeah,
If they
great.
know,
Yeah.
we might not like them all, but it might not all be appropriate for the master plan. But I think there are a few ways that in the first couple months we can have people, people tend to be pretty generous if they know it's for the master plan too.
Or that they'll get credit.
They'll get some credit. And we can just list them all.
right. And I think that's something we don't necessarily need to have a concrete idea in how we're doing it right now, but we can certainly think about it on the 14th and on the 21st as well, so.
Yeah.
But maybe just start thinking about the picture, I mean, we're gonna get pictures that we didn't know we wanted, but just to
Right.
get an idea of the pictures that we do want too, so then we can start to check off some boxes as far as getting the rock on New Haven Road.
It's another way of creating more engagement.
Yep, so,
Absolutely.
all right.
The other thing we could do on the 14th, I think one of the documents that Greg gave to us a couple meetings ago was a list of the chapters that North Country Council wrote, the chapters we have left to do. And I wonder if we might look through that and start planning for January and planning a priority, like an order of chapters that you'd like to see drafted by the class so that we can review and revise. And just kind of think about over that 4 months, what's a reasonable work plan? And we should probably be as aggressive as possible, because we're gonna have a lot of people power behind it.
Yeah,
So,
get it done.
yeah. And at least, if nothing else, if we can end up with a document at the end that's been formatted, it's been updated, and even if we want to go through additional rounds of edits and put it out to the public and take our time, we'll be 95% of the way there.
Okay, so I have on my list for December 14th, we're going to review the list of chapters and make an aggressive plan for how we're going to get from where we are on the 14th until probably the end of April. We're going to think a little bit more about photos and maybe have a bit of a plan to start, because at that point maybe there's going to be snow on the ground and things will look lovely again. And then the other thing is we are going to have our suggestions and edits for the maps for Greg. And I think what would be easiest for me is, because I know there's maps in different places, is it possible to have them as either individual PDFs or in one PDF? Is that okay, instead of having them at the end of chapters? Because I think we might lose some of the figuring out which ones.
Yeah, you're saying they're in a whole bunch of chapters, just one PDF, all the maps.
Yep.
With
Okay.
the caption, I mean, it might lose a little bit of context, but then you could just go back to the
Yeah.
chapter. So,
Yep.
yep.
That would be easier for
Cool.
me. Okay. All right.
Piece of cake.
Good offer.
It helps me out, and it helps me justify putting a bunch of time into this, which I'd like to do, and it'll really help the students out. And I think as long as we make it clear to people, they're not deciding the direction of the
Right.
community.
Yeah.
You're deciding it. A lot of it's been decided. Some of the
Yeah.
hardest chapters have been drafted, but they're going to help us with the additional inventory and making sense of bringing it up to date. And you may decide to take some of their stuff and put it in the appendix. You might decide to keep the plan not much longer than the chapters we already have. Like, all those options will be on the table for the town to decide, but it'll be a great experience for them to see how that process goes.
Nice example of collaboration.
Absolutely, right.
Well, a good way I think we hear a lot of like, oh, we'll get students to do that. We throw that around a lot, but to actually be able to employ them in a meaningful way on both ends, I think is really good.
Right.
So that's all good on the North Country Council side of things.
Oh, yeah, the planning boards and students are going to do a lot of the work.
Yeah.
You're okay with that?
Greg's like, where have you been
Yeah.
this whole time?
It's a weird spot, but
Yeah.
Get used to it.
That should become the second title on that.
Yes.
A weird spot.
Weird spot,
There's our
yeah.
hashtag.
Do we want Plymouth to be known as a weird spot?
Probably not.
Probably.
Oh,
Right?
thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
that's great.
Oh, hey,
Greg,
let me give you that.
Are you doing the trail thing on Saturday morning?
Oh,
Gyro
yeah.
cleanup?
Weather might be bad, but yeah. Maybe. Are you going to?
I was planning on it. I wasn't thinking about bad weather though.
You're welcome.
We had our staff out doing trail work this morning.
Wow, and the snow squalls.
Well, it was raining in Holderness. There's a snow line right at like Hardtack Road. Yeah, but yeah, so even worse. All right. New business announcement of issuance of conditional use permit. for an
Yes, we had our
accessory
very first one.
building. Smokes.
Wow.
The way it was left with me from your predecessor was that the board would be informed and that everybody else would do the heavy lifting. So, yes, this was It actually worked out well for me in that this was an issue home, and it had been for several years, and now it's finally
Oh, good.
straightened out.
Okay.
So, they took an illegal dwelling unit, and after having abandoned it for several months and years, have moved back into town. They will be taking over the smaller unit and renting it. The process seems to work. I'm surprised that I haven't gotten more requests, to be perfectly honest. I've had one other inquiry. That's been on the books for 6 months,
I know. I'm surprised too.
Well,
especially in Plymouth.
as we get more of these permits, and we're testing out how the ordinance works, so, or you are.
Yeah. Well, this was already built, so it was kind of a no-brainer. I just had to explain the parameters for them.
It's a good one to start
They
with.
fit, so.
Cool.
Okay, unfinished and other business. Public comments. All right, hearing crickets. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Not sure, so, supposed to hit that one as well.